This project was released as part of the project InclusiveGameLab, which was funded by the German Ministry of Research, Technology and Space, and realized by the University of Applied Sciences Cologne and the Department for Youth Media Culture. In today's presentation, we will talk about universal design. Let's first do a quick recap of our talk about disabilities. A disability is a mismatch between a person and their environment. This means that you can either actively disable or enable people when creating a virtual environment, or more specifically, a game. Accessibility features are implemented to allow people to play a game in the first place and ideally have an experience that's as close as possible to your creative vision. In doing so, these features level the playing field between different kinds of gamers. So, essentially, these features exist to remove unintentional barriers, which are barriers that haven't been added to the game's design on purpose, but appear because different needs of different players have not been considered in the design process. But accessibility features not only benefit players with disabilities. In fact, they can be very useful for different target groups. Subtitles, for example, help people who play in noisy environments, who are not native speakers, or who have to turn down the volume to avoid disturbing someone nearby, like a sleeping baby. Since disabilities take many different forms, and people's needs may occasionally be in conflict with each other, it's often challenging to create accessibility strategies that work for a majority of players. But fortunately, nowadays there are different approaches to remove access barriers. One of these approaches is offering accessibility options so that players can modify the game according to their needs. Examples for this approach are colorblind modes, high contrast modes, QuickTime event toggles like off, single button press, skip, and aim assist. Another increasingly popular strategy is creating products that are more accessible by default. So the responsibility is shifted from users to designers, and the end result will require less tweaking to work. This approach has many benefits. People with disabilities can access your game more easily and don't have to put a lot of time and effort into making it work, lifting a great burden from them and leading to happier customers. Universal design leads to better user experiences overall, and similar experience for all players so they can more easily discuss them and share insights with each other. Considering accessibility from the get-go and making it a design paradigm often saves a lot of effort and resources in later development stages. After all, you don't have to add options to mitigate issues you didn't consider earlier. Let's have a look at two examples to better understand the difference between accessible design and universal design. An accessibility feature would be a ramp or elevator that's added next to a flight of stairs so that people who use wheelchairs or walk can access a building just like any able-bodied person. This approach can work, but it's prone to problems. For example, an elevator may stop working due to technical issues, or a ramp may be too steep to use for some people. Accessibility options in a game may not have been tested properly and may not actually work as intended. By contrast, a universally designed space would be a gently sloping plaza that can be used by most people, or the curb cut we mentioned in the introductory talk on disabilities. So in essence, universal design means creating things that can be used without modification by as many people as possible. Universal design in games can take many different forms, and some design challenges resulting from this approach are more easy to solve, while others may require a lot of time and expertise. A simple example of universal design would be a puzzle that does not rely on color alone. Instead, the pieces may have different shapes. They may be marked with different symbols or text, and maybe even play different sounds when highlighted. This design approach makes the colorblind mode obsolete, reduces barriers for people with low vision, and supports players with a variety of vision-related and cognitive impairments. The game shown here, called Hue, is a negative example, by the way. The game was designed without players with color vision deficiency in mind, since the core gameplay loop is almost entirely based on color perception. The developer had to implement a colorblind feature after release, which adds symbols to the colored surfaces to make them more easily distinguishable. It's great that the developer identified this barrier and decided to remove it, but doing so was additional effort, cost additional money, and the final result was certainly not as good as it could have been with a universal design approach. Now, let's have a look at the 7 core principles of universal design which you can use as guidance. Equitable use. The product is useful and marketable to people with a range of abilities. The product is identical whenever possible, equivalent when not. In addition, the product is appealing to all users. This means you should try to deliver the same or similar game experiences to your players. Flexible in use. The product accommodates a wide range of abilities and individual preferences. So here's where additional options come in. You can, for example, allow players to change the pace of the game or pick another input method. Simple and intuitive. The product is easy to understand and use, regardless of the user's experiences and capabilities. Perceptible information. Essential information is communicated effectively, regardless of sensory abilities or ambient conditions. As mentioned before, a good way to achieve this goal can be to provide information through different channels at the same time. For example, ambient sound with captions. Tolerance for error. The design considers unintended actions and minimizes adverse consequences, for example through fail-safe features and by preventing users from accidentally triggering interactive elements. Low physical effort. The product can be used efficiently and comfortably with a minimum of fatigue, for example by avoiding mechanics that require repetitive actions like quick button presses. Size and space for approach and use. Appropriate size and space is provided for approach, reach and use regardless of users' body size, posture or mobility. This is particularly important when designing booths for exhibits, but also something to consider for the game itself. For example, you can let players rearrange the UI in mobile games to allow for more comfortable controls. It's important to note that you do not need to check all of these boxes by any means. In fact, some of the goals outlined here may even be unattainable for your project. For example, a complex management simulation can, due to its very nature, not be simple and intuitive, and that's okay. But if you try to follow as many of these principles as possible, your game will most likely be more accessible to a wide range of players. The most impactful model for game accessibility is a combination of these two approaches. Taking the social model as a design paradigm leads to games which are more accessible by default, not just for people with impairments, but for many different target groups, just like the curb cut. However, additional options for specific target groups or individuals are likely still useful. Being able to modify the game experience further can remove remaining barriers and lead to more satisfactory experiences. First, and perhaps most importantly, you should design accessible products for ethical considerations. People with disabilities simply deserve the same access to both critical infrastructure and leisure activities as others. In addition, games are considered to be important facilitators of social participation. If people can access games, they can access communities as well and make meaningful connections with others. Games can also be a great way to discover technology and sciences, and they can help people learn. People with disabilities should not be excluded from such opportunities. There are also legal reasons, however. Some countries require media products, including games, to conform to certain accessibility standards, and not complying to them can lead to costly consequences. In addition, more legislation may be introduced in the future, and retroactively making a product more accessible can be very expensive and time-consuming. So it's a good idea to always be ahead and lead the progress rather than trailing behind. In addition, you should care for financial reasons. If you don't consider accessibility, you're excluding a large target group. Gamers with disabilities are known to play longer, more often, and spend more money on games as well as in-game purchases as able-bodied players. Very often, these gamers act as whales, meaning that they contribute a significant amount to a game's overall revenue, which is particularly important for mobile and live service games. There are two key reasons for this. Gaming is a very popular pastime activity among people with disabilities. It helps them connect with people, allows for escapism, and also enables them to do things they may not be able to do in real life, hence leading to a strong feeling of agency. Even though this has been a well-known fact for several years, gamers with disabilities are still an underserved target group, so they are likely to buy and appreciate a well-made game, especially if they have impairments which are considered less often by accessibility efforts. To summarize, if you make your game more accessible, you may expand your player base, which in turn means that you can increase your revenue and extend the lifespan of your game in this highly competitive market. And speaking of target groups, let's talk about aging. Many impairments are acquired as people age, and the average gamer age is steadily increasing. This does not only affect people age 50 and over. A look at the esports scene shows how quickly our bodies begin to change in our lives. People in their late 20s or early 30s usually cannot compete because, among other things, their reflexes aren't as quick anymore. And the core gamers of today will be affected by this as well. So if you don't make your games accessible, you will not only miss out on tapping into new markets, but also lose a significant target group and thus money. These are some sources and links for further reading.